Capture report. Blank body. Codename Cicada. Cicada. Human name Nicholas Dawkins. Obtained. Cost. Afghanistan. Captured by Gamma Team. Capture report. Filled out by Captain J. Tompkins. G Team. Repeated reports of the Shade have come in from Cost over the past few weeks. Intel suggests a powerful blank body that seems to have a taste for other blank bodies. Near entire population of leeches exterminated. Steady stream of others, mostly from the Shadow Weaver strain, mindlessly entering the city by night. Most of them seem to be part of the Sabbath, or whatever the heretic blank bodies call themselves. Codename Cicada Cicada was found within a blown-out hospital keeping abandoned patients alive, presumably for food. Damn bloodsucker was once a U.S. Army medic. Now he's using his training to stock up on victims. Sick bastard. His greed for blood was so strong that he actually surrendered, so that none of his stash would get shot up. Holding report. Filled out by Dr. C. Whitmore. Blank body and Dawkins. Cicada. Cicada has been a model prisoner. Other than that, we fear that we will only have him for a few days, maybe a week tops. The monster refuses the back blood we've been offering. Other than that, he seems willing to talk, though his temper rises with each night. He doesn't nourish himself. No matter. Sergeant First Class E7 Dawkins will prove useful. He has been assigned for the Cicada program. As soon as he falls into stasis, he will be flushed with a modified strain of Mesospora cicadina. Next, all we need is the orders on where he will be inserted. His release will need to be planned for a location with a large blank body presence. Mesospora cicadina is a fungal pathogen that infects only 13 and 17-year periodical cicadas. Infection results in a plug of spores that replaces the end of the cicada's abdomen while it is still alive, leading to infertility, disease transmission, and even death of the cicada. Nosferat additive found during the siege of the blank body population of London, deep within the city's underground. This blend of stagnant water, blank body blood, and other toxins seems to have an unnatural effect on the plant and animal life that it comes into contact with. Infected seem to gain mass, strength, and endurance. Combining the substance taken from these spawning pools is suspected to give Mesospora cicadina the same properties as blank body servants. Greetings, kindred. Welcome back to our world of darkness. And today we have a sponsored video. I am working with the AIDs Ministries and Health Plus Indiana to get the word out on public health. Now, I've done these videos before, and in the description, you will find video links to when I have personally done the tests that we're offering here today. If you go to the QR code that we have on screen at the moment, it will take you to a free at-home HIV test. This test is simple to use and very discreet. The process is extremely easy, and results take minutes. Ordering these free tests is taking control of the responsibility of knowledge of your own health. Now, we also do have another QR code on screen, and These tests are made available thanks to the AIDS Ministries and AIDS Assist and Health Plus Indiana, which are reliant on public support through donations. If you're able to make a donation for this amazing and worthwhile cause, please scan that QR code. Knowing your own health status is a right, not a privilege. And unfortunately, that is becoming harder and harder in these modern nights. We are doing this today for National HIV Testing Day, which is June 27th. This is something that I feel very strongly about, because having that knowledge should not be something you have to struggle to do. You also, if for some reason you have social anxieties and don't want to deal with going into a public building, making appointments or anything like that, you can do this at home. Now, doing these tests, if it does come up with a result that you're not 100% happy with, it's probably a good idea for you to go get another doctor's opinion on this. But this is definitely a step in the right direction, and I want to thank our sponsors for letting me be a part of this mission of theirs. It means a lot to me. But today, let us talk about Project Cicada. This is something that I've talked about in multiple times. I think actually with some of these videos with sponsorships, actually we've talked about Project Cicada. But this has definitely become an overarching plot line in my games, in my Thicker Than Water game. And it has frighteningly gotten out of control. Now, the reason why I am here discussing this now is because this has finally started to wind down. However, I gotta point out that I started this plotline a couple of years ago, and it took a while for things to get really out of hand. So, what is Project Cicada? The documents that were being gone over at the very beginning of this video kind of points it out. This was a Second Inquisition plot. It has been attributed so far to the Society of Leopold and various government allies that they work with in the World of Darkness. But still, no one knows exactly what organization is responsible for this. All they know is that Nick, our friendly neighborhood salubri, was unknowingly infected by a mix of a fungal virus that the bugs cicadas have, the 13 and 17 cycle cicadas, which causes them to become infertile. It also causes them to have an overactive sex drive and become highly aggressive. So the whole concept was that this military organization decided that they were going to take the cicada fungus and mix it with what are found in Nosferatu spawning pools. Now, a lot of you might not know what this is. This is kind of an old topic that doesn't really come up much in 5th edition. I don't think I've ever seen anything about it. But in older editions of Vampire the Masquerade, there were these things called spawning pools. Basically, if you go into Nosferatu territory, you are going to find these big, noxious, steaming puddles of what just looks like spoiled blood in the middle, in the sewers or underneath the sewers. But what these things actually are is all the Nosferatu are involved add to it, and it just turns into this massive living ghouling station, effectively. Rats drink from it, they get big, and they turn into Nosferatu-looking things. Alligators get into it, if you want to look at that whole alligator in the sewer thing. They're typically surrounded by massive mushrooms and overgrown plant life, because it slowly ghouls everything, actually creating something very similar to revenants, which Clan Tzimisce creates. The whole concept of Project Cicada was that they found a way. They took this original. Their original intention was, let's take a a, a substance that causes infertility, so that kindred won't be able to embrace anymore. Well, how do we get it inside other kindred systems, aside from just injecting it into the one and hoping for the best? They chose specifically Nick Dawkins because he was embraced as a salubri. What he was doing in that burnt out hospital in Khost, Afghanistan, is protecting people who the staff of the hospital had to run for their own safety and were unable to get the patients out in time. He wasn't feeding on them. He was literally keeping them alive. He was making sure that nothing bad happened to these people. Nick's a genuinely good person, and the Salubri tend to have an empathy higher than most other kindred. So he was chosen because as a Salubri, they have massively addictive blood. If you smell the blood, you can go crazy, you bite down, and basically if anybody bites him or drinks his blood, they get infected by the cicada virus, and so on and so forth. The whole concept is it stops people from being able to embrace, and it also will cause them to want to feed more. Humans tend to only carry the virus for about a day or two. Without the constant infusion of kindred blood, the virus dies out. So in ghouls, it lasts. In vampires, it lasts. But in most other cases, it's not something that can generally infect the human population. So, why are we here talking about this? Aside from it's very topical and kind of matches with the concept of keeping an eye on your personal health. Thank you to our sponsors. It's because we actually got to see this spread like wildfire. It was terrifying. The documents that were gone over at the very beginning of this video were found and read and understood. And Nick, not knowing exactly how things worked, did his best to keep contact very, very limited. Now, Nick was an NPC. I played Nick. But Nick would only feed on bag blood. He didn't feed off people because he didn't know if he could pass it that way. For a while there, he wasn't using his disciplines because he wasn't sure if the use of his healing gifts could possibly pass it, which luckily they found out through lots of trial and error and study through much more medically and technically inclined kindred than Nick, that he was safe to utilize his disciplines, except for the fact that when a Salubri utilizes powers, sometimes what happens is they bleed from their third eye, releasing the smell of that delicious, delicious Salubri blood into the air, which can cause severe issues, making other people want to feed on him, infecting them. So anybody else that they feed on gets infected. If they embrace, or they can't embrace anybody at that point, they're completely sterile. So everything was fine for a while. And when I mean a while, I mean like well over a year. This had just been sitting in the background, not doing anything, just sitting there waiting as a ticking time bomb until something would go wrong. That something that went wrong was a Toreador by the name of Adrian Cash. Adrian Cash and Nick Dawkins were in the military together. They served together. They'd known each other since before they were embraced, and when Adrian came into the game, one of the first things that he started doing was searching for Nick, because Nick knew that Adrian lived in Portland. And when he finally woke up from torpor and got out of basically any kind of danger, he reached out to his friend. Eventually, they found each other. Nick ended up getting involved in the Old Town Coterie, which is consistent of Adrian, Tinia, Jabbar, so many. Oh my god, we actually had kind of a revolving door of members for a little while as people were settling into their characters and stuff. But the big relationship that we have here to look at is Nick and Adrian. Over time, things started to occur. Plot lines started to mount, and it came at one point that Adrian needed to learn a discipline that Nick had. And Nick was massively against the concept of giving his blood for anything. But after a while of wearing him down and let's just step outside, step out of character for a moment, some damn good persuasion rolls on Adrian's player's part towards Nick, he finally submitted to teaching him those disciplines and also using his blood to do it. Now, out of character, there were a lot of good reasons to not do this. Obviously, there's the Cicada virus, which everybody knew about. They didn't know everything about it, but they knew it was there. They knew that it was not a risk, but it was a certainty that if anybody drank Nick's blood, they would be infected. Now, there's lots of reasons to blame Adrian for what happens next, because in all reality, it's 100% their fault. But also, it led to some amazing story, and that's something that I want to point out, is that it fed plotline. It didn't make things worse. To bad decisions. Sometimes doing things like that really do push the storyline, and I'm very happy with the way that it ended up going. It went a lot further than I thought it was going to. But there were also developments that occurred. It was common knowledge at this point in time that the disease spread through feeding off of an infected. Not that an infected could pass it by biting, which was not originally the case. So Adrian figured as long as no one drank his blood, things would be fine. He would be sterile. He didn't think he wanted to have childbearing anyway. So that wasn't really anything that bothered him much. Unfortunately, unbeknownst to the player base, the storyteller, myself, had a specific way of handling how the Cicada virus was going to work. There's a game outside of the World of Darkness called Plague Inc. And in that game, you model a disease, release it into the world, into a location, and you watch and monitor its spread, as well as evolve it and give it resistances. It's a very fun game. It's very addictive. It's very dark. I played it using Project Cicada as a baseline. I set the original infected, patient 0, to North America, and I set it to have it's a fungal virus, and set it up so that it had basically what it should have to start. I started doing this originally to monitor the concept of spread of this disease, but I started making notes on evolution. And the fact is, over time, as the disease spread, it started to change. The longer it had a chance to gestate in a particular target gave it more and more traits. So by the time it got to Adrian, it became spreadable through bite. Adrian fed at the Penny Diners Club quite often, actually. Penny Diners Club, for those of you who do not know, is a location in my city that is vampire only. It's a restaurant, and there is a population of blood dolls, individuals who know what's going on, that are there to be fed on purpose. Kindred can go to the Penny Diners Club, order an individual off the menu with their personal bio on it, and basically have a safe place to feed without fear of being caught, and companionship, which a lot of people don't take in consideration, is Kindred sometimes just hunger for that companionship. Adrian fed on people there, and it started to gestate inside these people because they were ghouls, and because it is now spreading through bite. So anybody who fed at the Penny Diners Club and fed from the same people that Adrian fed from were now infected, including the Prince of Portland. This just kept going and going and going until, keeping track of everything that was going on, most of my NPCs and most of my player characters were infected. Now, it didn't take long for everybody to be able to track down exactly how it spread. And no one blamed Nick. He was a victim of circumstance. He was kidnapped and infected with this stuff. A good amount of people ended up blaming Adrian directly because he infected himself knowingly. Now, I will state that Adrian didn't know how easy it was to spread at that point, because when it was just Nick, it wasn't that easy. Nick ate specifically out of blood bags, but that's because he was terrified and paranoid of what he could do, that it might evolve, that it might spread. And it took a while of wearing Nick down to actually get him to agree to utilize his blood to teach Adrian anything. Eventually, after so many people were infected, a kindred, well, not even really kindred, supernatural primarily, but mostly kindred motorcycle club that has come into Portland. We have a session a couple times a month called Bite Night, where it's basically just all the vampires get together and just beat the hell out of each other. Just no death. That's basically the only rule. But other than that, use your disciplines, have fun, just like get that out there. I never personally would have thought that was going to be a good plot line myself. The concept of we're going to roll dice aggressively at each other didn't sound that fun, but I've actually participated in a couple, and yeah, I gotta say, it's a really fun time. The people who participate in Bite Night are wonderful storytellers as players, and they give such great descriptions when it comes to it. But that is neither here nor there. The problem is that Adrian Cash started participating in these Bite Night events, and in the process ended up infecting the motorcycle club as well. It started spreading, and they realized that after a while, because eventually we had people studying it, we had downtime actions just getting just flooded. I was getting flooded with I need to do this, I'm trying to do this, science test here, medical test here, all of this stuff. There was conversation of the CDC getting involved. The city leaders got together. Billy Smith, who is my Prince of the Camarilla, the multiple barons in the city, the Cicada leadership, they all got involved. Everybody started dumping funding into this, and then eventually, one of the player characters, a very confusing character that I'm not going to go into a lot of details of because we'd be here all day specifically talking about her, Alice, was able to come up with a test. Now, originally, the test being taken could take anywhere from 12 hours to 7 days to try to figure out if someone's infected. Alice created a basically a pH reading test that was able to identify it within 10 minutes. So we had one character who was now working with other characters, both NPCs and PCs, to create a mass production of this test. Thin Bloods were working on it. Like it was amazing to see the cooperation that was happening between players, non-players, and everything to get these things. But then we also had another group sprout out. This is almost like a coterie, but it has become much larger than that. We have a hospital by the name of Ivory Towers, or Ivy Towers. And the funny thing is about that is that the name is inspired by a different plot that I was running with the whole Welcome to Ivory Towers thing, which is up on the complete listing of Thicker Than Water stuff. But jokes aside, this group, which does not hold sect affiliation, despite the name being so close to Ivory Tower, being Ivy Towers, it's a veterinary clinic that has a back entrance through a garage. And I love this because if anybody is trying to come in there, the whole concept is we're going to open up a hospital, a clinic, which for some reason has happened in both my tabletop and the LARP that I run. But it's a vampire-run hospital that you walk into, or you go in through the garage, you talk into a box, a radio box, and basically say the password is my car is sick or my car needs treatment or something like that. They let you in, and then it's a supernatural area. There are werewolves working as clerical work and healing, and there are ghouls all over the place, and it's like a general supernatural hospital. It's an interesting thing that has come out in Thicker Than Water. But they started working with Thin Bloods. Now, one of the members of the motorcycle gang, the motorcycle club, the fight clubs, came in and performed a ritual, a werewolf rite, which removed the bane of the disease. So basically the living sentient embodiment of the cicada virus out of the original host, Nick. This hurt him excessively. The bane came out, and they were able to utilize it to destroy it effectively, binding it actually into a totem. Nick was in torpor for a little while. He eventually got woken up by the director of the hospital, who had blood potency strong enough to do such things. But around the same time, they discovered that any discipline that utilizes boiling the blood can work as a healing process. It burns it out. It's something that the military Second Inquisition, when they were designing this whole thing, had not taken into consideration. We have had the most inventive uses of kindred disciplines to try to fix this thing. The very first one was one of the players who has Baal's Caress used it on themselves, burning themselves out from the inside and completely just destroying this. We had Thin Blood Alchemy utilized. There's a Thin Blood Alchemy formula that basically takes any disease or impurity in your blood and forces it out of your pores. But when you do that, what ends up happening is once it hits oxygen, it explodes. So it causes fire damage to anybody who is utilizing it. And the hospital went all in on this. This is actually the same thing that the prince utilized to heal. He went through that hospital, which was really cool. They had so many great ideas to try to counteract how like it damages you. But it still sucks. Just gotta say it. We even had this amazing night where we have a player character, Anarch Baron, by the name of Melisandre, who volunteered herself to be the first subject because she was infected. So many players, so many NPCs ended up being infected. Most of them. Probably about 80% of the game. It just kept going and going and going and getting so much worse. And everybody was trying to figure out how to manipulate this virus and how to use it to, how to find cures to get rid of it. Everybody was pulling together, but there was also that group of paranoid individuals who didn't want to succumb to like whatever horrible side effects these things offered. The most interesting way that I saw anybody try to solve it, and this was just amazing. We have a Tzimisce by the name of Varian. Varian is played by a player that I met in Chicago who played Varian then, and we were just like, we want this character in the game. She's so unhinged. She's awesome. So, Varian, being a very scientific-minded character, started utilizing, and I'm not gonna tell players that I think have great ideas that no, it's just not gonna work. There are occasions where that does have to happen, but if they're being so proactive, like I want to throw them something, and this was just amazing. What Varian did was utilize vicissitude, which allows you to make any physical changes you want to your body to combat the foreign entity, which is the Cicada virus. And we had almost like a microscopic, not even almost like, we had a microscopic battle between Varian's vicissitude control and the Cicada virus. And she ended up curing herself like this. She even got the chance to attempt to cure on another person, which ended up yielding positive results also. We've had a lot of interesting things when it comes to the Cicada virus. It has mutated multiple times. Animals have been found infected by it, larger animals. There was an elk out in the woods. It has started to grow out of the pores in almost like The Last of Us. You know how like the yeah the zombie virus being this fungal bacteria. The thing is, though, this isn't really a zombie virus. All it does is make vampires sterile. And it also makes them want to attempt to sire childer. And it also makes them violent over time. Luckily, we didn't really get into any situation where it started to affect anybody's minds. Keeping track of the evolution chart that I got from Plague Inc., the characters were about 2 weeks away before things were going to get bad. But they pulled together. They developed tests. And they stopped pretending like it was something that needed to be hidden. They started working together. They started testing themselves. And that's really why I chose this topic to go along with our sponsorship for today. Because once they were able to stop looking at this as something they had to keep secret, once they were able to start working together, donating their resources, taking the test, doing all those things, we started to see results. At this point in time in game, pretty sure 100% of the player base is cured of the Cicada virus. Most of the NPCs are. And it got really terrifying because during the heart of everything, when everything was spreading and people didn't quite realize it yet, we had a situation where one of the Gangrel players called a thing. called a gathering of all the gangrel in the area, who showed up and were there for probably about half a month or so, feeding, getting infected, spreading the infection, and then they left, spreading the infection even further. Now, my NPCs were going to keep everything quiet, not say anything to anybody, but it was insisted upon by player characters, by the active community, that the prince, the barons, the Dawn of the Cicada needed to spread that word. They needed to let people know that it was out there and that they were working on something to fix it. First, the test to catch it, and then the process to eliminate it. This could have been a lot worse, and it could have gone for a lot longer. I have to say that as a storyteller, I'm massively proud of my player base for being able to handle... Yeah, we're playing a supernatural game, but this was a very real-world scenario that does need everyone's cooperation to be able to handle. Project Cicada is very reminiscent of the AIDS panic, the HIV spread, even COVID. And seeing the players have that panic mode at first, but then being able to overcome it, knowing that it was time for them to put differences aside. We had enemies. We had straight out enemies from this game working together because they knew it was time to put shit aside and work together to solve a problem. Project Cicada is probably one of the biggest plot lines that I have ever run. It's lasted a very, very long time, cultivating itself in the background, being this silent threat that most people didn't know about until it was too late. This is a heavily dramatized, paranoia-based storyline, blaming cloak and dagger secret societies and government entities on infecting. But the way that it was handled with the cooperation was something that inspires my real-world hope that we're not completely screwed. Anyway, that's about all I have to say about Project Cicada. This might be very well the last time you hear anything about it, because as of this filming, it's on the way out in my game. And by the time that this video actually gets up, hopefully it's not anything that we're going to have to worry about anymore. So, I am voivodemekhet, and this is Our World of Darkness. Thank you for joining me in this basically an explanation, deep dive into a plot line that has just been cooking in the background of my game for a very long time. I would very much love to hear your comments on this type of plotline. When I first started playing 5th edition, we were in the middle of a pandemic, and the concept of running plague plot lines of any kind was not something that I wanted to deal with. But I do think that this helped me mentally deal with a lot of thoughts that I was going through personally with the current world state. But anyway, yeah, please let me know what you think about this plotline in the comments. Please like the video if you enjoyed it. Share it if you think that this is something that is useful to a fellow player or storyteller that you might know. But also, those links, those QR codes, the donation and the free test that they will send you that you can do in the privacy of your own home. Use them, please. I want to see how many people actually order these tests actually, that you know what, that would be a great comment. If you order a test, I don't know, give me a thumbs up or something in the in the in the in the comments. Just I would like to hear back from these amazing organizations that they had an amazing result from this video. So thank you very much, and I will see you in the next one. Good evening.